All right. Good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started with this episode of Tech Thursdays. This is going to be episode 147, AI industry updates, because that's exactly what everybody wants to hear more about. AI, I know it's a thing. And we're also going to talk about some upcoming CPUs from Intel that are coming later this month, as well as some not so new GPU. But there is a new GPU. It is on the screen right now, if you can call it a new GPU. But there is a new GPU launching. I don't know when, but it's soon, and we're going to talk about it. And then I guess at the end of the stream, we're going to talk about the games of March for those that tune into the weekend live streams. So if you're new to the channel, this is Tech Thursdays, the weekly tech-related show that I do every Thursdays live with the viewers, where we discuss all things related to the PC DIY market. So that is basically custom built PCs, whether you're building a computer for gaming or AI or home lab, whatever the use case is, workstation, doesn't really matter. That's what we talk about on this channel. And then we sometimes also talk about the gaming industry, because the gaming industry is, I'll say, a lot of PC enthusiasts, the gaming industry is adjacent to that hobby. So there is a little bit of overlap, maybe not a little bit of overlap, but quite a bit of overlap. So we do talk about that from time to time. On the weekends, usually a Friday evening or Saturday evening, I do gaming-based live streams focusing on new games that I'm interested in playing. So last weekend, we covered Resident Evil Requiem. I unfortunately wasn't able to finish the game in 2 different play sessions, so I think I need to do 1 more play session to complete the game, maybe 1.5, but we will probably finish that this weekend. And then there is a new game coming out next week that we are probably going to take a look at via the freely available demo. I'm tossing around the idea of whether or not I should devote time to the demo, because I really do need to finish Resident Evil Requiem, and I think if I dedicate like an hour of the weekend stream to the demo of a certain game that is coming out a week from now, then I may or may not be able to finish Resident Evil. So yeah, so what do you guys think about the Resident Evil Requiem, for those of you that played it? I guess we're covering these topics in no particular order. So if we want to talk about gaming, the girl is creepy in like Nemesis vibe. Nemesis? You mean Nemesis as in like Tower of Fantasy Nemesis? I don't know how that's creepy, although maybe I'm misinterpreting what you're referring to. PC hardware is no longer made for gaming PCs. Yeah, we're going to talk about that because there's a lot of industry change happening in the technology world, and we may not delve too much into the global. Let's just say there's a lot of global instability right now, particularly in the Middle East, and that actually has a significant effect on the technology industry. We might talk about that if you guys want to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about anything in terms of the politics of what's going on in the Middle East right now. But suffice it to say, if there are more random missiles hitting the surrounding area over there and they're not being able to be intercepted, the technology industry, as we know it, could suffer dramatic setbacks, because what a lot of gamers and enthusiasts do not know, or maybe some of them know, if you guys weren't aware, a lot of the money that goes into companies like, Intel, AMD, Nvidia, just to name a few, comes from the oil rich nations over there. So a lot of the money that they basically export their oil for US dollars, and then they use US dollars to buy stock in a lot of these tech companies. So if those countries end up in ruin, where they have to spend time rebuilding infrastructure, that means they got to take money out of the stock market, which means that's going to hit Nvidia. That could potentially trigger a crash on the tech market, at least temporarily, for the next like 2 years or whatever. And that can shift roadmaps. So that would mean that the RTX 6090, for example, which is a little more than a week, it's more than a year away at this point. It could become 2 years away. It could become a year and a half. It could change the the landscape in terms of the roadmap. It could shift everything further out. Now, we've already covered something around those lines regarding the memory issues globally with the DDR5 and all that stuff. This is a whole nother factor.
RenoDX is a must-have mod for all games if you play in HDR. I now play new games in SDR until RenoDX becomes available. Night and day differences in HDR with and without the mod.
What is RenoDX? I've never heard of that until you mentioned it. Appreciate the super chat, by the way, as always. RenoDX. I have never actually heard of that. RenoDX. I have to Google this. So, is this new? It looks like it's for DX games, DirectX based games. So this doesn't work with Vulkan, right? I'm just looking at it right now on the GitHub page. RenoDX. Renovation engine for DirectX games is a tool set. It can replace specific shaders. This sounds like Reshade. I'm familiar with Reshade from a number of years ago, but I haven't really done any of those sort of things for like a decade at this point. It fixes broken HDR tone mappings. Oh. So it's specific to DirectX though, right? Like D3D and DirectX. Interesting. Said it makes a night and day difference in HDR. Is the HDR implementation in games bad, though? I guess it kind of depends, right? RE9 proves that devs can make a game run correctly. Well, yeah, RE Engine has always been very good. RE Engine has always looked like... And every time there's a Resident Evil game or a Devil May Cry game, at least Devil May Cry 5 in recent history, those games on RE Engine have always looked at like they're at the forefront of the whatever generation those games launch into. So, like, for example, when Resident Evil 7 launched, that was on PS4, and that was a very good-looking PS4 game back in the day. Resident Evil 7, back in 2017. 2017. 9 years ago. Yeah, Resident Evil 7 is 9 years old. That's crazy to think that that game is already 9 years old. That's almost a decade. Wow. Path tracing still doesn't run that well. Yeah, but remember what we talked about regarding path tracing in a previous episode of Tech Thursdays? How it's not meant for current generation to be capable of handling. Current generation hardware can't do path tracing today at playable frame rates. Marathon is DOA. Did I call that? Did I say that? I don't remember saying Marathon was... Dude, when people brought up Marathon last week, I didn't even know what Marathon was. So I don't know if I can claim any sort of recognition in saying that the game is DOA. I didn't even know the game existed until people mentioned it last week. That's funny. Less players than day one High Guard. Wait, what happened to High Guard? Is High Guard still going strong? High Guard was another game that I was concerned about. Okay, the difference between Marathon and High Guard, I actually knew about High Guard. I did not know about Marathon. I didn't even know what Marathon was when someone mentioned it. When someone said Marathon last week, I thought they were like referring to me doing a Marathon live stream featuring like multiple different games or something. I didn't know they were talking about an actual game. High Guard also... High Guard failed? I heard that High Guard was supposed to be the next PUBG. Or no, not PUBG. I was told by somebody in the industry that the I don't know if it was the lead developer on HighGuard or the publisher group. They said that HighGuard was meant to be just as successful as Apex Legends and capture the entire market share of Apex Legends, or at least, if not capture the entire market share, take a huge chunk out of Apex Legends player base. It shut down March 12th. That's like a week from now. Oh, the secret game. No, the secret game is the game that I was referring to earlier. So there is a free playable demo right now. It was made available yesterday. There is a free secret demo. Well, okay, this secret game that we're referring to releases a week from now. Like, it's the 12th of March. And there is a free demo on Steam already available. And I believe it's on PlayStation as well. So I've already actually played the entire demo yesterday off stream. I was debating whether, well, so the thing is, I checked the demo download page on Steam, and by the time it was available, it was already at the, like, I found out about it at the time that I normally end Tech Thursdays. So I wasn't about to start a live stream, like, when I normally end a live stream, if that makes sense. So I ended up playing the entire demo off stream. You know, I might play through it again tomorrow. Is there a Crimson Desert demo? Is there a Crimson Desert demo? Wait, what? Hold on. Is there? That's not the secret game. Crimson Desert, is there a demo? If there's a demo, hold on, we might have to change some of our regularly scheduled programming. Well, I gotta check this demo that you guys are talking about. Crimson Desert. Crimson Desert. Is there a demo? No, there's no demo. No, Crimson Desert is not the secret game. It's one of the most anticipated games. Why would it be a secret game? The secret games are usually games that not a lot of people know about. Last year, the secret game was the game that I live streamed the entire playthrough back in September, I believe. Or was it September? Yeah, it was September. Yeah, Crimson Desert was media only, and that was like a few weeks ago. That was actually a few weeks ago. They didn't release their videos about it until recently, though. The event for Crimson Desert was actually like early February or late January, if I remember correctly. They had media go and play the game. I will be streaming Crimson Desert, though. You can count on that. The one game that is being pushed for me, like scheduling-wise, unfortunately, Monster Hunter Stories 3. I still have not played the demo for Monster Hunter Stories 3. And I will probably only be able to cover that game after Crimson Desert, which means probably April. So I'm just looking at the schedule. There's only one game that I'm tracking for April, and that's Pragmata, and that's like at the end of April. So that leaves a good chunk of April. I can devote that to Monster Hunter Stories 3. I usually don't like having to cover a game like after it has been out for a while, because I know that the hype cycle for it is already gone at that point. So it ends up where I'm like late to the party and there's less people interested in the game. But I can't, I mean, there's just other games that I had already set aside time for. And unfortunately, Monster Hunter Stories 3. If Monster Hunter Stories launched like in April, this would not be a problem. It's just because it's launching like smack dab in the middle of two other games. And it's just bad timing for that game. That is the reason why not a lot of people think about this. But the release date for games, the launch date of games does actually matter. Because if a game launches way too close to another game, especially a game that is highly anticipated and getting a whole lot of hype, like in this case, you look at Crimson Desert and you look at Monster Hunter Stories 3. Both of those, so one of them is a spin-off of a very, very popular global franchise, in the case of Monster Hunter. The other one is, it's kind of a spin-off of an existing MMO called Black Desert Online. Now, Black Desert Online is kind of, It has been. It's had more popular cycles in its history, and it's not as popular today as it was, several years ago. But Crimson Desert was originally planned. My understanding was Crimson Desert was supposed to be a. It was supposed to be like, I don't know if it was an expansion or if it was like some kind of sequel to Black Desert or something based off of the actual MMO. It was supposed to be an MMO. That's what I remember. But then they changed it to a single, or maybe it was a multiplayer type game, and then it became a single player game, and then it was still focused based out of the Black Desert world or something along those lines. I don't really remember the full story behind that. All I know is Crimson Desert looks really, really good. It looks like it is. I said this last time. Crimson Desert, as it stands right now, has a very good chance at being Game of the Year. And I don't say that often. Like the last time I said that and a game didn't, well, okay, I said this. Remember I said this last year with Expedition 33 and I ended up being correct. But I've also said this before and I've ended up being wrong. The last time I said another game would be Game of the Year, I said Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on the PS5 back in 2024, that would be Game of the Year. And I was proven wrong because Astrobot, or what is it? Yeah, Astrobot ended up winning Game of the Year that year. Like that surprised me because I thought there was some other games on that list. I think like Black Myth Wukong was another one. And then there was some other games. But I remember my vote for Game of the Year that year was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So I still believe that was the best game I played in 2024. But it didn't win. And I was wrong. But I said Expedition 33 was going to be Game of the Year. And I said that like literally like right after the game came out. And I was right. So, anyway, so I guess let's shift focus here. Let's talk about some of these hardware topics here. So this first one, the GeForce RTX 3060 is expected to make a comeback. This is going to be known as the return of Ampere, or the return of small Ampere. Small Ampere, yeah. So RTX 3060, I don't know why it's coming back. The only thing I can think of is Samsung 8 nanometer. Like, I don't understand why this needs to exist. But anyway, supposedly, the RTX 3060 is coming back. I really don't know why. I don't think we need this GPU. What is this going to be? Like another 8 gigabyte GPU that no one wants? Like, I really don't understand. 5-year-old GPU set to launch in a few weeks. 5-year-old GPU means it is an old, elderly GPU. A 3-year-old GPU is a middle-aged GPU. So a 5-year-old GPU is literally a retiree, like elderly. This RTX 3060 is basically like a 75-year-old human being in terms of technology. If you translate graphics card years to human years, this is literally like a 75-year-old man that's going to enter the market as a brand new candidate here for a gaming GPU. So that is really bad. So, I don't know, man. Breaking news. The information previously reported by NVIDIA about the resumption of production of the 3060 has been updated this month with new arrival information. This reads like some kind of, the way this is written sounds so not really credible. I don't know. I don't know if I actually believe this now, just because of the way this is written. According to the latest accurate information from upstream, whoever writes like this, I can't tell if they have a 8th grade level writing ability or if English is not their primary language. Like it just doesn't, or this is written by AI. Like I don't know, it just doesn't look right to me. Something is sus about this paragraph. Early April Fools, possibly. I don't know. I mean, it's not launching on April 1st, so I don't know. 196-bit is wrong? Where does it say 196 on here? Oh, right here. 3060 was available in 2 different memory configurations. Oh, you can bet that if they bring this back, this is going to only be 8 gigabytes. There's no way that they're gonna bring back the 12 gigabyte in this market. You really think they're not gonna bring a 12 gigabyte 3060 to market? This is gonna be an 8 gigabyte. This is gonna be an 8 gigabyte only. Because the thing is, it's like, hey, buy an 8 gigabyte GPU in 2026, so you can realize how bad gaming on-prem is, so you can go and sign up for GeForce Now. You can go sign up for GeForce Now and get like 12 gigabyte, 16 gigabyte, whatever. You don't need to worry about the VRAM issue. You don't need to worry about the memory shortage. Just sign up for GeForce Now, or just go subscription-based gaming. You don't need a PC. You don't need a high-end PC. All you need is a MacBook and connect to GeForce Now, and you know, like, that's kind of the way I read this. Like, what is this? Why is this here? Did anybody ask for this? Who? Hold on. Well, I'm not even gonna do the poll. I know exactly how the viewers are gonna vote. I don't need to do the poll. I was gonna ask the chat, would you get the 3060 in 2026? I already know it's gonna be 100%. It's gonna say no. This is terrible. Like, what is this? Like, 30 series doesn't even support NVIDIA's new DLSS stuff. Like, you can't do frame gen. You can't do NVIDIA frame gen with this thing. You can't do so you basically have to rely on AMD. You have to rely on a competing brand's technology to leverage like more newer modern features for PC gaming, aka upscale and frame gen of all things. So yeah, I don't know if this is fake news or what, or like this person's not AI, at least I don't think so. So I don't know. Seems kind of weird. Okay, this is an old article, but I do want to bring this one up because I didn't cover it, but it kept getting recommended when I was looking for news articles. So this one's actually an article from January. So this is already like almost 2 months old. NVIDIA's CEO says you shouldn't talk bad. You shouldn't talk bad about AI. Saying that those fueling the doomer narrative are deeply conflicted people. Deeply conflicted people. Those fueling the doomer narrative about AI and daring to call it AI slop are deeply conflicted people. The CEO of NVIDIA said this. NVIDIA's Jensen Huang throws shade on the likes of Anthropic's, what is this? Omade for their stance on AI advancements. Let me see what he says. Okay. So it sounds like they're really important. It's really important to have this conversation. Extremely hurtful, frankly. And I think we've done a lot of damage with very well-respected people who have to have painted a doomer narrative. End of the world narrative. Science fiction narrative. Oh, this sounds exactly like how he speaks. And I appreciate that many of us grew up and enjoyed science fiction, but it's not helpful. It's not helpful to people. It's not helpful to the industry. It's not helpful to society. It's not helpful to the governments. There are a lot of many people in the government who obviously aren't as familiar with or as comfortable with the technology. I don't know why he's mentioning the government. Like, no one in the government said, like, did the government paint this doom? I don't think the government did that. I don't know what's up with that. Like, well, anyway, Jensen didn't mention any names when talking about this topic. He did say that companies pushing for the AI regulations. Oh, that's what this is about. Okay, I know what this is about now. Yeah, this is not about the gamers complaining about AI. This is actually about... Yeah, I know what this is. Okay. So this is actually... okay, this is related to this. Okay. Yeah, with all the crazy stuff going on right now, as of earlier this week, this couldn't come at a worse time. So, or a better time, depending on how you look at it. The U.S. could soon, that's the U.S. government, could soon turn NVIDIA and AMD's AI chips, which are supposedly, remember, they're super duper advanced, into a foreign policy tool with not a single country being left out. I don't know, but this sounds crazy. Like, so basically, you can't sell your chips to basically anyone outside the US now without some sort of export control or licensing agreement that has to be signed off on by a government or both government entities. Really, really strange times, man. Like, just reading some of these headlines. So the Trump administration is exploring options to address AI chip exports. Now, keep in mind, this classification of the AI chip could be so broad that this could okay, if this includes the AI chips, do you know what will fall into this category? Because it's very broad. Now, the example in the article is talking about B300, but what's a GPU that could end up getting into this category? Who here knows what chip I'm talking about? I'll give you a hint. It is probably the most desirable GeForce graph. Thank you, fake frames. Correct. The RTX 5090, and even more well, okay, that's probably the more important one because that's the one that more people could potentially afford. But the RTX Pro 6000 definitely. The RTX Pro 6000 definitely 100% guaranteed falls into this category. 100% guaranteed. I know that for a fact. That is a fact of life. There is no denying that. Anyone who doesn't agree with me has no idea how the industry works. So the RTX Pro 6000 definitely is classified under the US government as an AI chip. Now, the one that is questionable, but could easily get lumped into that same category, known as guilty by association, because the RTX 5090 is of the exact same chip. It is just a cut down variant of the RTX Pro 6000. It could also be subject to the US government's export control system. So that means that if this plays out, that means when the RTX 6090 launches, only Americans will have access to it, at least initially. That is crazy to think that that could end up happening. That means the rest of the world, all the people in the EU, all the gamers in Australia, all the people in the what the US government will classify as ROW. ROW is code for, okay, what is ROW, guys? Do you guys know what ROW means? What is ROW, the acronym, in the US government's classification? Who knows what ROW is? Let's open up Paint. You got it. Rest of world. Rest of world. Rest of world will be the first one to be hit with export ban. ROW is like the first one, man. They're going to be like, ROW can't have 6090. You can't sell 6090 to ROW. So some nations might skirt by. You know, I can tell you which ones will get dibs. The ones that'll get dibs on it will be, you know, the US's biggest partners. So like the Canadians will get access to, so you know, like Linus Media, those guys in Canada, they're gonna get access to 6090. You know, like they're not gonna get stopped. So Canadians will get access to 6090. I'm pretty sure a lot of Western European countries in the like whether they're in the EU or not, like the UK, Germany, France, I'm pretty sure those guys, Italy, they'll get access. The Scandinavian countries will most likely also have access. But the rest of the world, if you're not in that list that I just listed off, if you're based out of South America, if you're based out of like Central America or the Middle East or Asia, APJC, like, You might end up waiting like 6 months or whatever. I don't know. Like it'll work its way through eventually, but the fact that like America gets first dibs, and I guess America and their whatever the closest allies get first dibs on stuff like 6090. That's kind of crazy, man, because it's like that to me, it's almost borderline overstepping on international trade because I don't even know how they would classify that. But can you imagine if you're based out of like, I don't know, just pick some random some random country. Like let's say you're based out of what's a country that wouldn't be like if you're based out of India. India would not get dibs on 6090, at least not initially. So I mean, that's the type of stuff that could end up happening with stuff like this. If they give it to Canada or Europe, pretty sure they'll be stocked in China. Well, they'll end up in China from the ports regardless, but the official policy, though, is the thing. And it depends on how they intend to enforce stuff like this. Because as we know from Gamers Nexus's video that they did in Hong Kong, this doesn't really work over there. But see, that's because over there it's manufacturing. Like in places like China, it's kind of easy to sidestep. It's not that easy to sidestep if you're not in the manufacturing chain. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're somebody in Dubai or, some Eastern European country somewhere or Turkey or one of those places, like good luck trying to get a 6090. You know, if stuff like this starts playing out, if this becomes true. Don't expect 6090 to be much better than 5090. Yeah. Market for 6090 is incredibly low. Won't make a difference in India. It's a strange policy, though. Yeah, it says here the diffusion. Okay, so the debate around AI chip exports has emerged several times since chip manufacturers like NVIDIA and AMD achieved significant compute breakthroughs. This matter was also under intense focus by the Biden administration, which introduced the AI Diffusion Act that addresses... Okay, so for those that are unaware... if you guys remembered when Gamers Nexus did that whole like 3-hour long documentary on they called it like black market. I mean, it's not really black market. That's such a what is the word? It's kind of like not really false advertising, but it's kind of inflating the truth or the reality of the situation. It's not really black market, but there was an act during the Biden administration. They did do the AI Diffusion Act. Congress did pass this, and that is actually what made it harder, technically like harder for mainland China to get access to stuff like RTX 4090 at the time, and now 5090. Well, actually, yeah, during the documentary 5090. So it was something that was started with the previous administration, but as you can see, it's not super easy for them to enforce because they're literally on the other side of the world. So it's like, what are you going to do when the supply chain and the manufacturing is literally all congregated right over there? You know what I'm saying? That was the point of that Gamers Nexus video. It was a really good video. But this new administration, seeing what they've done recently with some other places, like, it's kind of crazy to think how they could kind of like force their hand on some of these overreaching programs to do stuff like this. So I don't know. I don't really think it would change much of the situation in places like China, but it could affect other parts of the world though. Like I said, rest of world, ROW. So, I mean, that's the thing. You don't think it's going to happen? Never say never. With this current administration, what I've learned is never say never. With the stuff that's kind of gone down in the last week, I don't know, man. Yeah, but the thing is, you're talking apples and oranges. The whole Greenland thing, that is very, very different from this. Because that's another country. That's completely different from, oh, you can't sell, like a US company that is on the US tax system being forced to adhere to export regulations. That is something that can be enforced. Trying to buy another country is like a whole nother thing. Like, I wouldn't even compare the two because those things are like completely different. So, EU can make deal with Taiwan. Where is it from? It's not about EU making a deal with Taiwan. It's because Nvidia's the owner of Nvidia owns the IP, not Taiwan. I don't know what you mean by Taiwan. Taiwan has nothing to do with this. I don't see how they can enforce it over there. Without like audits in like customs places and stuff like that. I don't know how it's enforceable, but it could end up becoming a thing. I mean, the Biden administration already did the CHIPS Act, the AI Diffusion Act. We saw how that played out. So, but the thing is, this doesn't apply. So the difference is the CHIPS Act from the Biden administration only applied to China. It doesn't apply to the rest of the world. This headline, not a single country being left out, is very different from, oh, you can't sell 5090s to China. You know, in that one, they're singling out one country. And that country just so happens to be where all the manufacturing is. So good luck trying to enforce that. But this reads completely different. This seems like something completely different. This is almost like they're afraid that other countries could get access to US-based technology to develop whatever it is that they're afraid of them developing. You know what I'm saying? That's where this is coming from. That's kind of the core of what's driving this, is fear of others being able to develop technology by leveraging AI to enhance the capabilities. That's what this is. At the core, that's what I understand by reading this. Okay, so kind of weird article, man, but I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff going on this week. That was this. Okay, we covered this and that. What else we got here? Okay, here's another one. NVIDIA's CEO says OpenClaw did in 3 weeks what Linux took 30... Okay, apparently it took Linux 30 years to achieve what OpenClaw did in 3 weeks. And he claims this is proof of how big agentic AI really is. Taiwan isn't the main focus, it's the Netherlands. Yeah, but remember what I said earlier, though? This, when I read this, I understand this, to me, sounds like this is going to affect ROW countries, rest of world classified countries. This is not going to affect the Netherlands. This is not going to affect Canadians. That's not who's at risk here.
MSI Lightning Z5090 surpassed RTX Pro 6000 in gaming benchmarks. Cheaper too. Worth getting?
This late in the cycle, if you already have a 5090, probably not. I wouldn't get it at this point. Because how much faster is it than the 6000? Right? The difference is this. See, the people who are buying the Pro 6000 are not buying it because it's faster than a 5090 in gaming. They're buying it because they need the 96 gigabytes of VRAM. That's the reason why they're buying it. It's meant to be used for AI model inferencing. That's why when we were talking about this article, well, no, not this one. It was, this one? Whichever article, maybe it was this one. The one that we were talking about where I said that the RTX Pro 6000 is classified, will fall into this category of export control. The 5090 will get dragged into it potentially because it's the same chip. It's just cut down. It has less VRAM. Maybe the fact that it has less VRAM will save it. But the reason why the Pro 6000 is going to get classified by this, if this actually happens, is because it is an AI chip. Like, it's literally classified as an AI chip. There's companies who buy it in the thousands, in hundreds of thousands of units. But a lot of you guys don't know that. You guys don't know that RTX Pro 6000 is sold in bulk. It's not sold individually. In fact, I don't even know how Micro Center in the US got hold of RTX Pro 6000s to sell to consumers, because that's meant to be sold to enterprise. But they somehow got some through the disti supply chain somehow, and yeah, they're selling them. And Newegg is doing the same thing. I don't know how they did it, but and I haven't been to Micro Center in a while, so I need to remember the next time I go there, which is probably not going to be for a while, considering everything is so expensive right now. So that I don't really bother buying electronics right now. But the next time I stop in there, I'll probably ask them, like, how do you guys get RTX Pro 6000s? Because I thought they were meant for AI. Because they're meant to go to, like, Sam Altman and OpenAI and those guys. That's who they're meant for. They're not meant for gamers. They're not meant for regular consumers. And that's why they're priced at, like, $9,000. Okay, so this article is saying that it took OpenClaw like 3 weeks to do what Linux took 30 years to do. So NVIDIA CEO says that agentic AI has brought uses 1,000x or uses. Wait, has brought uses? Brought uses? I'm not sure how that reads. 1,000x higher tokens, bringing in immense compute demand. Jensen has talked about AI being a 5-layer cake, and one of the more interesting layers that yields the most returns to hyperscalers and frontier labs. Yeah, frontier labs and hyperscalers. That's who RTX Pro 6000 is for, is the applications layer. Okay, so they're talking about what, like layer 7? OpenClaw and AI agents are examples of how AI, when placed in a hyper-personalized environment, yields results that replicate human workloads. The CEO was asked about how he sees enterprise demand for AI evolving. Oh, enterprise demand. Dude, Jensen isn't even paying attention to enterprise AI. Like, he is not even doing this. Like, this guy is starting to be like, I don't even know how to describe him. He's basically like a little squirrel now. He's got lobster arms. Dude, he's just saying whatever sounds like it sounds good at the time, man. Like, Jensen's turned into a salesman. He is literally just a salesman at this point. Because my understanding was NVIDIA didn't care about enterprise AI. Like, they were going to let, like, other vendors handle that. And now he's like, oh yeah, enterprise. Yeah, dude, check it out. OpenClaw did in 3 weeks what Linux took 30 years. So it's like, what are you doing? Like, probably the biggest phenomenon that's happening. And if you're paying attention to it, I'm sure you are, OpenClaw is probably the single most important release of software, you know? Probably ever. If you look at OpenClaw and the adoption of it, you know, Linux took, some 30 years to reach this level. OpenClaw in, 3 weeks, has now surpassed Linux. It is now the single most downloaded open source software in history, and it took 3 weeks. So what is he implying here? Is he implying that OpenClaw literally vibe coded Linux's replacement or Linux's successor in 3 weeks? The AI, like the agentic AI, literally vibe coded a Linux replica? Like, what is this? Like, what? Does it work? Can you play Steam games on it? It's made out of vibe code? An OS made out of vibe code. That sounds fascinating. Jensen's fascinated by it. Though, through a series of prompts, agents like OpenClaw can execute tasks that would traditionally require domain-level expertise and significant time. The reason OpenClaw has gained momentum. So was this vibe coded the whole thing? How did they make this? They had an AI agent just create an entire thing. Like, what is this 5-layer cake thing? And where's the discussion about MCP? Like, no one mentions MCP lurking in the background. They always talk about, like, oh, agentic AI, oh, 3 weeks to make a Linux operating system. Just vibe code, man. Just vibe code. That's all I hear from these AI companies. No one's ever talking about, like, MCP. I guess the companies that actually do the technology on the ground are the ones that are actually doing the real innovation, while all these guys are just, like, hyping it up. They got to keep hyping the train. They got to keep that hype train going, you know, because it's like they got all those investors. But, oh, man, if you lose those oil fields and your Abu Dhabi group and all those guys got to pull out of the stock market temporarily to rebuild, not sure what's going to happen to that NVIDIA stock price. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. There's a lot of potential for a crash happening or something to go sideways. And I'm not even talking about the memory situation at this point. That's one thing. Like, there's a whole nother thing that's lurking in the background that I think a lot of people aren't even aware of yet. And that's the geopolitical stuff that's happening, because that can affect this. That can definitely affect this. What goes up must come down. Vibe coding will age like NFTs. Well, the thing is, here's the thing about vibe coding, though. Vibe coding right now is basically nothing more than spaghetti code. However, vibe coding is going to get better. Like, that's the thing. I tested it myself earlier this week. And I've got people that I know that have played around with the vibe coding. At first, they were just looking at it like it was some kind of meme. You know, it's like, okay, it's like 15% accurate. This is completely unusable. You could never start a business with this stuff. It's completely useless. But then, you evaluate it like 4 months later, and all of a sudden, the same prompt is now giving you something that's like 35% accurate. So it's like just 4 months ago, it was 15% accurate with the vibe code. Now it's like 35% accurate. So it is actually getting better, though. That's the thing. It really depends on how the model, the data that the model is being trained on. That's the key. And another thing that a lot of people in the public are unaware of when it comes to this agentic AI stuff, the public mostly looks at ChatGPT, Anthropic, all the publicly cloud-hosted GPTs for AI applications. They're evaluating these features like vibe coding on those public platforms. And those public platforms are really not always the best platforms for doing something like vibe coding. So what's actually happening behind the scenes is you have tech companies that are building their own GPTs internally using their own code base. So you're talking like Epic Games. I can guarantee you right now, Epic Games uses their own custom GPT. It's not ChatGPT. It's not publicly available. It's in-house only. It has access to all of their code libraries, and it's trained on everything from Morrowind, Oblivion, like all of them. Wait, no, Epic Games didn't do that, those games. Well, you know what I'm saying? Like Unreal Tournament 2004, all the way through Unreal Championship 2, the Xbox 360 era, the Xbox Series, the Xbox One, all the game history of Unreal Engine. Like Epic Games is definitely training their AI model to vibe code based off of all that stuff, and they're fine-tuning it over and over and over again, so that eventually it will be something that their developers can leverage to enhance their abilities. That doesn't mean they're going to get rid of developers, but that means that they're going to enhance the developers' debugging abilities, enhance their ability to code a basic framework for a early stage game concept. So there's a lot of things that it can do to help enhance the ability of an individual developer in the gaming industry. And this is not just gaming industry. This can be like any industry. So that's what's not being said. Like a lot of people are looking at like the memes of how like vibe coding using ChatGPT results in a bunch of nonsense and it's completely yeah, that's because it's like public data. You know, it's gonna like source through so much random garbage to try to put something together based off of it Googling stuff on the side to figure out, oh, this is how you do this thing. Okay, this is this one. This is object oriented. It's like, okay, it's like if I tell it, write me an object oriented program that writes the game Pong. Create like Pong. Base it off of Atari, whatever, you know, like, and it'll go in, it'll research and it'll just code all the stuff. And okay, I mean, it might be 50% accurate, but if you are an internal game studio and you literally train the AI model off of your entire company's history of game design and all of the source code for all the different games, and you basically fine tune it, like, okay, this is how you set a global while loop for a certain condition for a game event that needs a trigger at like I'm just thinking like Dragon's Dogma 2 had a ton of in-game trigger events with various NPCs spawning in at certain, you know, like it can help with stuff like that. It can do a lot of that. You couple that with something called MCP, which I find interesting that none of these AI-based news articles ever mention MCP. MCP is like, that's game over for like human workers, because MCP is where you take it to the next level. The next level. Have we talked about MCP on this stream? Have we talked about MCP? Maybe we need to bring up Paint. MCP. Who here knows what MCP is? This is like the biggest thing that none of these guys, including Jensen, have ever talked about. I don't think I've once ever heard him mention this. This is like the biggest innovation in AI. Yes, model context protocol. Model context protocol. This is like the next level. This is the next level. What is this? This is basically the ability for, so let's say you have an AI, let's say, okay, this is a human. We're going to designate the circle head as a human. The human stick figure has a circle for a head. The AI, the agentic AI, has a square head. This is a bot. This is an AI. So the AI is a square. This could be a robot, it could be an android, it could be whatever. Doesn't really matter, it's an AI. So you have the human worker and you have the AI agent, the agentic AI. So this one is human. This one is the AI. Okay, the difference between up until this point, when you had, let's say you're interacting with a chat GPT, pretend this is not here, pretend I never mentioned this. So up until recently, up until like late last year, this is how new this is. So up until the end of 2025, when the human would send a prompt to the AI only had the ability to look up the data in the model that it was in the data that it was trained. So the data set, the metadata, all those labels, the diffusion of all the similarities and characteristics of the words that the prompt has for it to figure out what is the user actually asking. That's how it responds. It's using the similarity of words. Because if we're talking a language model, it's like, okay, let's just do a prompt here. Like, write me the next, okay, create Final, why am I typing so bad? Final Fantasy 17. Create Final Fantasy 17 as a UE5 game. This is the prompt to the chat GPT. Create me, or I guess write the code. If it comes back with garbage, the next prompt would be, and using the context of the conversation, the next prompt would basically make it recursive lookup on all the stuff that it said, and then it'd have to redo it. Basically, it would be like, okay, well, write me the game script for the intro level of Final Fantasy 17. So this type of thing, right? So, or whatever. It doesn't even have to be asking it to do something where it has the code. Like, it could be, write me a story about, okay. Or, well, what's an even basic one? Or, what is the fastest AMD GPU? A basic, fact-based question based off of the time period. Basic, a hardline question that has a specific answer versus something that requires it to, actually do a lot of inferencing. So, up until this point, the model can only rely on the data set that it was trained to give you the answer. And a lot of these public tools like ChatGPT, they have access to the internet. So if they can't, if they're searching through the database and they can't figure out, there's no mention of Final Fantasy 17, there's a mention of Final Fantasy, but not number 17. There's Final Fantasy 16, but that's not Final Fantasy 17. So it's going to either hallucinate based off of existing stuff. It's going to probably tell you, okay, it's going to code you something that is based off of Final Fantasy 16 because that's the most recent one. Or maybe the source data will focus on Final Fantasy 7 because that was also relatively recent. It's very popular. So it could come up with a hallucinated result that's not very accurate. And that's the reason why AI is not quite there yet. But that's where something like MCP comes in. Because MCP is a game changer when it comes to AI. Because what MCP does is okay, you are an AI, you're a language model, a large language model that is trained on Unreal Engine 5. You know how to vibe code Unreal Engine 5 games. Because you're an AI model developed by Epic Games for in-house game development. But you don't know how to, put the code into the context of, an actual game, an actual story-driven game. So, if I wanted to take Unreal Engine 5, and if this model knows how to code everything in Unreal Engine 5, but it doesn't know how to relate that to a cohesive story-driven narrative, that's where something like MCP comes in. Because now, if I give it a prompt, if I basically tell it, the story setting, there's a main protagonist, he goes on a journey, there's a boat, they sail around the world, and, blah, blah, blah. It's can you write me an Unreal Engine 5 game based off of that storyline? How does it take the story and then create a game out of the story that fits with the story? Don't make a first-person shooter Unreal Tournament 2004 if the game is supposed to be like The Witcher 3. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to work. So this is where MCP comes in, because MCP allows the AI model to step out of its area of expertise and leverage an entirely different data set or a different skill set of something. So it's instead of just being a coder who's terrible at writing stories and designing characters, now it can reach into an art database to develop character designs based off of the story, based off of the description in the prompt. Now if it needs to, let's say it needs to make it a multiplayer game. Let's say it's a 3-player co-op game like Apex Legends or Neo 3. Now it can further go into another model that has data on how to do low latency networking at the server level to code all of the back-end stuff into the game. So MCP basically allows what is traditionally an agentic AI model or an LLM that is designed for a specific skill set to go beyond that initial skill set and draw upon the expertise of other AI models. Basically, it allows AI to leverage another AI to help it come up with the answer or come up with the solution. So MCP is a game changer because this allows for... I might oversimplify it by saying this, but it's kind of like having an AI model gain the ability to talk to another AI model and communicate in machine language to come up with a better result for the user. So, and what's surprising is no one talks about this in the industry. Like when you hear all this stuff about AI, no one ever mentions this, but this is actually the biggest innovation in the AI space because this is going to allow the AI to feel even more dynamic in terms of the results that it can give you. So it's not going to be a bunch of like very narrow sort of stuff. You know, like if I say, write me Final Fantasy 17 in Unreal Engine 5 using whatever, C++ or whatever. Like, but then if I tell the story should be blah, 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 if I tell the story, it doesn't know what to do with it because it's like it just wants to code the game, but it's like doesn't know what to do with the story. Well, with MCP now it does know what to do with the story. So that's what that does. Model Context Protocol. That actually changes it a lot. And that makes it a lot more usable for the average worker or whoever is going to leverage it. So anyway, that was kind of the AI discussion for this episode of Tech Thursdays because we don't normally talk about AI at this depth, but this is something that I think you may end up hearing more and more of from the AI group because this actually changes things a lot. So playing around with this thing is pretty interesting because now an AI, like a chatbot, no longer feels like it's limited to a certain set of topics that it was trained on. Now it can actually step outside those boundaries. So that is the next thing. That's the next level for AI. And it's relatively new. MCP, I believe it only came out like sometime in Q3 or Q4 of last year. So it's not even a year old at this point. But yeah, there's a lot of investment going into this AI stuff. It's not going away. It's not going away. So I wonder, when I read this, I was thinking OpenClaw probably has to be using MCP. It's got to be using MCP because it can't vibe code its way to a Linux lookalike in like 3 weeks without being able to think outside the box. Basically, that's another way of thinking about it. MCP allows an AI model that is trained on a specific skill set to think outside the box. It can go outside of that skill set or that data set that it knows about, and it can go and like access other data sets. Assuming it has access to it. That's the key. It has to have access. It has to have a way to access that other skill set. Now, how do humans do that? How do humans access that? Like if a human is going back here, let's say this human is a character designer. This is a game designer, but they do character design. They're a character designer. They don't do code. This worker for Capcom or Epic Games doesn't write code. They're not a coder. They never went to school for that. They don't have a computer science degree. They know how to, they're basically an artist. They know how to develop the character. They can write maybe the backstory. the things like the upbringing of the character's wants and needs, blah, blah, blah. They do that. If they need a coder, what do? And they're not allowed to vibe code. So imagine we're in a world where there's no AI. What is this person going to do if they have to do the coding? What are they going to do? Because if I start quizzing, like this is another person, if I start quizzing them on C++, they're going to fail the interview. I can tell you right now, they're going to fail the interview. So they need help. What do? How does the game studio deal with this? This person does character design, they're not a coder. What are they going to do? Needs more people. Exactly. They need another person. They need a team. They need other people. They need to go get someone who knows how to write the code. They might need to get more than one person depending on the amount of effort required. So what do? They go and they talk. They talk to the people. They talk. They communicate in human language. This is how the game is gonna be. This is level 1. We're gonna do like, okay, we're gonna make a game where it's gonna have like 5 zones. So you have your central safe area. You have the early level area. You have another area that you can go to. They can go to another place. They can go to another place. And they can go to the final zone of the game. And the game will be called Elden Ring 2. Okay? Because this is exactly how Elden Ring was made. So, you need a team. So, this whole thing about MCP is allowing AI to have a team. Now AI can go and communicate to another, like now this is an AI over here. It can go and talk to another AI. Like, hey, we need to collaborate. I need to respond to this user with this game that they want me to code real quick. What does it mean if the character has a sword and a shield and blah blah blah? Like, what is that? Okay, it means this. Here's the description of the character. Here's the backstory. Basically, here's the context of the level 1 area. Blah blah blah. So that's what MCP enables it to do. So best product manager recognition is best product manager. Product manager of what though? What am I the product manager of? what? What am I the product manager of though? What am I the product manager? Best product manager of what? Of an MCP? Anyway, so yeah, so that's basically the new thing that I guess was worth talking about in the AI world, since there's really like nothing to talk about this week when it comes to technology. Okay, there's a couple of things we can talk about. We already talked about how how NVIDIA has a bunch of stuff about AI. Let's talk about the what is this? Intel Foundry break-even target for 2027 now looks a lot more real, driven by 18A, 14A, and a surprising advanced packaging surge. Intel is surging. But it's a little, I mean, it's next year. It's all next year. So, like I said at the beginning of this year or late last year, 2026 is kind of a throwaway year for tech enthusiasts. Like this year, there's literally like nothing. Okay. I shouldn't say that. There is stuff to look forward to, but it's all at the very end of the year. And it's not a lot of stuff. It's basically CPUs. So if you're interested in CPUs, there'll be some interesting stuff to look at the end of the year. But for the rest of the year, and for the rest of the market, like, okay, SSDs, no. Memory, definitely not. So there's like nothing. And then and like GPUs, we talked about the one GPU that's launching. So RTX 3060 supposedly is gonna be launched in mid-March, basically in like a couple of weeks. So I don't know how real this is. To me, it doesn't make any sense to be launching a 3060 in March again, like 5 years later. I don't know. But yeah, like this is the one GPU to launch and not look forward to. So, like I said, 2026 feels like a throwaway year for technology. And then all the Intel news is for next year. So, otherwise, you're confined to new, like, mobile releases that don't have enough system RAM because they're forced to make them have no more than, like, 32 gigs of RAM, which, I'll be honest, guys, like, I would not build. Like, if a system has soldered RAM, and if it's limited to 32 gigs of RAM, I would not buy that. I don't do 32 gigs of RAM anymore. That's not enough RAM, especially because it's soldered. If it's socketable RAM, I can kind of work around that. I can understand since there's an upgrade path. But if it's soldered 32 gigs, like, that is no. That is like a hard pass. So, because 32 gigs is like minimum spec in 2026. Like, it's certainly starting to feel that way with the way a lot of these games are getting and a lot of just application resource bloat. It's just kind of gotten pretty bad. So, yeah. I don't understand why they can't do like 48 gigabytes soldered, because 48 gigabytes soldered seems a lot more realistic. 64 gigabytes soldered is way more ideal, but I can understand why 64 gigs of RAM is not going to be a thing in 2026 because of the AI market. And here's the, well, do we need to bring up again? I don't know, man. I don't know. Yeah, let's talk about the memory real quick since we're on this subject. So let me remove MCP. This was our AI discussion on this episode of Tech Thursdays. All right, I can't delete these guys, so we'll just kind of like, I don't know, delete them the manual way. Okay, so, what was I even talking about? Oh, the GPU. What was I talking about? It was not the 3060. What were we just talking about? We're talking about the CPUs. No. Memory. Ah, thank you. Memory. Okay, memory. So, Micron sold 40% capacity for 2026 to OpenAI. So they don't have any. They got like nothing. They got like nothing. The rest of their memory goes to HBM. So that implies AI servers, AI chips, because those use high bandwidth memory. So 40% was already claimed. 40% is all of like the DDR5 stuff. That went to OpenAI. Like already, they bought all of it like last year. And the rest of it, the remaining 60%, goes to AI chips. So basically, the whole thing went to AI. Like, the whole thing went to AI. You either went to OpenAI for the servers, for, like, actual memory, like, registered DDR5 that goes in servers, and then you had the actual HBM that goes in the AI chips, like Blackwell, like the B300, for instance, and AMD's MI 350 or 450, whatever it is. So, the Helios thing. So, yeah, like, all that stuff, gone. All right, let's talk about the next guy. Samsung and Hynix. Both combined sold 60% of their combined capacity to AI companies. All of it. All of it. Gone. Like that. Gone. Samsung. Oh no. Yeah, Samsung allocated the rest to, you know, Nintendo, Apple, Android phones. So whoever is making mobile devices, guys. Whoever's making mobile devices. Hello, smartphones. They're kind of more important than gaming PCs. That's how Samsung looks at it. So the rest of their memory goes to like consoles, phones, cars, etc. Like other things that are not computers, that are not gaming, that are not GPUs. So who's left? SK Hynix is the only sole remaining player in this. And you know what? They just sold the rest of it to, you guessed it, AI product companies. So basically, not like OpenAI. What I mean by this, let me rephrase this. They sold the rest of it to OEM providers of AI hardware. There, we'll say it that way. We'll say it that way. So they literally just sold out, dude. Like, everybody's gone. Everybody's sold out. Hynix was still in there. Hynix was still hanging in there. Hynix was still hanging in there. Because you could still go to Micro Center and buy, I mean, it'll cost you like $1,200 for like 64 gigabytes of memory. But you could still buy the high-performance DDR5 with SK Hynix inside. But I don't know what's going to happen now. So memory pricing... Memory pricing just went up 200%. 200%. End of February. 200% increase. This is to OEMs. This is the price to OEMs. So guys, this 200% is not consumer increase. This is like the price. Okay, to put things into perspective, this is the price hike to like Corsair. So basically, like SK Hynix increased the price Corsair pay or G-Skill pays by 200%. So this isn't even like consumer. This is like G-Skill is like, hey man, I need your memory chips because I need to sell DDR5 8000 because GTR said DDR5 8000 is the magic memory. So I got to get some more of that magic memory. Well, SK Hynix is like, sorry, bub, I'm charging you 200% up. It's 200% increase. 200%, take it or leave it. That's all you get. That's all you get. Sorry, that's all you get. Because I got to make more memory to, you know, AI company A, AI company B, this server dude over here, Dell over there, HPE over there, Lenovo over there. So get in line, 200%, take it or leave it. So it just went up 200%. So you know what that means? You know what that means? If you need DDR5 and you're building a PC, guess what? 350% uptick. 350% uptick to consumer. Because Corsair says so. Because they're getting screwed over by Hynix. So they're going to have to pass it down. They're going to kick the can down the road. And it goes all the way down to the consumer. So yeah. This, okay. This, when is it? September? September. Memory price will increase another 200%. This is being talked about in the industry right now behind closed doors. So you're not going to hear stuff like this from a lot of mainstream channels because they don't actually have a lot of access to this. I'm just going to tell you, we're not done with the memory pricing going up. It's still going to go up. It's going to go up again after the summer. So because right now what's happened is there's been a bunch of orders that have been placed that are like going through the supply chain. So there's not a lot of forecast in play right now through the summer for additional spend on AI servers. That's the reason why the price is not going to go up again until the next wave. That's why. So that's why there's a lag time for September. So for the next 6 months, the memory prices will probably hold, but then they'll probably go up again in the second half of the year. Yeah, the DDR5 8000 kit is now $1,000. Yeah, what is that, like a 48 gigabyte kit? Can you imagine paying $1,000 for 48 gigs of RAM? I can tell you right now, I can't survive on 32 gigs of DDR5. I mean, you guys who watch my... I mean, that's mainly because of the use case of how I use the computer. But, like, I understand that most people are not doing what I do with a computer. Like, you're not doing live streaming, and you're not, like, local recording a game at 4K native resolution and downscaling to YouTube at 1440p, 60 frames per second. The amount of bandwidth required for that, the amount of memory in the operating system required for that. So for me, personally, I can't survive on 32 gigs of RAM. I have to have... So for me, my minimum is 48 gigabytes of RAM. That's my minimum. But that's me. But a lot of other people out there can probably survive on 32. I wouldn't do any less than 48. I don't do less than 48. All of my memory kits today are either 48. So I operate in 3, except for Threadripper, I have 3 memory tiers. GTR's memory tiers are 48, 64, 96. These are the ones that I operate. But realistically, I only operate 48 and 96 today. I have 2 memory kits that are 64 gigs. One of them I don't have access to anymore. I gave it to like a family member. So that was so if you guys remember, I had a Corsair XMP. Man, we're running out of space. I gotta make this font like smaller. It's too... Or I have to delete some of this stuff about AI. So I had Corsair Vengeance 64 gigabyte DDR5 5200 XMP. This was like one of my earlier memory kits. 5200 XMP. Yes, 5200 XMP. I don't have this kit anymore. That was one of my 64 gigs. My other 64 gigabyte kit, which I still have, in fact, I have 2 of them, is the G-Skill Ripjaws S5 DDR5 5600 XMP CL30 1.25 volts SK Hynix. This memory kit, this is a 64 gig. This is 2x32. So this is a 64 gigabyte kit. I actually have 2 of these, which means I have 4 sticks total, which means I actually have 4. So if we say 128 gigabyte, I have 4x32 gigabyte. I still have this memory kit. There's 2 of them. This was the very first DDR5 memory kit that I ever owned. I got this memory to go with the launch of the Ryzen 9 7950X. Yes, I bought XMP DDR5 for the Ryzen 9 7950X, and it works totally fine. So that memory kit I still have. So I'm sitting on this. I'm trying to remember where this is. Ah, yes. This memory kit is in my NAS. This is in my home server. My home server is using this memory kit. But other than those, all of my memory kits are either DDR5 8000 48 gigs or DDR5 6400 96 gigabytes. And of these, I also have, yeah, no, that's what it is. It's 48 gig kits. It's either 2x 24 or 2x 48 or 4x 24. I have that configuration as well. In fact, this is my most common scenario. 4 times 24. The PC that we're streaming on right now is using 4x24. So a total of 96 gigabytes of system RAM. And we can show that right now. So let's bring up Task Manager on the stream. So here is the computer that I am streaming on literally live right now. You guys can see we are using an AMD Ryzen 9 9950 X3D 16 core 32 thread on an MSI X870E godlike motherboard. And we are using 96 gigabytes of DDR5, and this is 4 sticks of DDR5 running at 6400 mega transfers. Like I told you, I tell it like it is, 4 times 24. So 4 sticks of memory, all RGB, G-Skill, Trident Z5 Neo with those profiles. So that's what we're running. So these are the sort of, I'm basically sitting on a whole bunch of memory. So I don't need to worry about memory because I bought in, like when I told people to upgrade was when I upgraded. So I got this stuff really, really cheap. I paid, for me, my price, so G-Skill, DDR5 8000, 48 gigabyte was, I paid like $219. And then for the other one, G-Skill DDR5 6400, 96 gigs, I paid about $350. That is what I have. This is what I paid. So you guys can see. This is what I paid. So imagine, let's just leave it like this. Let me make this one 220. So imagine what the price of these memory kits are now. Imagine the difference in price today versus what I paid. This is the reason why I keep saying 2026 is kind of a throwaway year for like building a PC because it's so not cost effective. And these are the secret memory kits too, because this one is 1.35 volts, and this one is also 1.35 volts. This one is CL32. This one is CL40. Yeah, DDR5 8000 CL40 at 1.35 volts. That's very highly binned RAM. And I paid like $220 for that. Check out the price of my memory. Oh, let me find it. Let me find my memory. Desktop memory. Oh. G-Skill. And the amount was DDR5 8000. Okay, that's actually, okay, $500. $500 for my magic memory. Yeah, that's the magic memory. Intel XMP 1.35 volts, CL40. Yeah, I paid $220 for this. $220. And I bought 2 of them. So I have 4 sticks total. So I paid for less than this current price. So for what is that? 220 times 2 for $440. For $440, I got 96 gigabytes of this memory kit. Like I got 2 of these for less than the price of what one kit costs today. So think about that. And now, so what about my other memory kit? My other memory kit is a 96. Oh yeah, actually, whoa, it went down a little bit. I remember when it was like 1200. So this is my other magic memory kit. I don't really consider this a magic memory kit. This is just my what I called my high dense memory kit. So yeah, 1.35 CL32 Intel XMP. Although there is an Expo variant, I actually have both variants. But yeah, the first one that I got was an Intel one. It doesn't matter. I use both of them with the AMD system. So it's DDR5. Yeah, this is it. This is it. This is the other memory kit. And again, I have 2 of these. I have 2 of these. So I have a total of 192 gigabytes. Now, I'm not using all 192 in one system, but you guys can see, like, look at that. I paid about $350 for one of these. So 2 of them would be like $700. $700 for 2 versus nearly $1,000 for 1. Like, that's crazy. 1,500. You only have 3 desktop PCs, so not nearly as much as you. Well, I think fake frames, aren't you using 48 gigs now? I remember you telling me, or I remember you mentioning 48, you were going to go to like 48 gigs. Were you going to get like a DDR5 8000 kit? Because usually when people tell me they're going to get 48 gigabytes, when I hear someone say 48 gigs, that to me means that they're going to buy QDIMMs or they're going to buy like fast DDR5, like, 8000 type speeds. Because if I'm doing single rank, you have 48 gigs of DDR5 6400 for 100. Okay, well, that's a good deal though. That was a really good deal for 140. Yeah, 48's nice because 48 is my favorite. So, okay, the reason why I do 48 and 96, there's simple reasons. You guys know me. I'm all about what is the most simplest way to do something without overcomplicating it and introducing instability. So, the reason why I prefer 48 and 96 is because, well, back then the price was good, the ratio was good in terms of the money spent, but the real reason is 48 gigabyte is the highest density for single rank. Single rank. You guys know what I said earlier. Personally, 32 gigabytes is not enough for me. But I can operate on 48 gigabytes of memory. So I accept 48 gigabytes of memory. But that's as low as I'll go. And the nice thing about 48 gigabytes is this is the highest density for single rank. This implies fast DDR5, aka DDR5 8000. If you care about DDR5 8000 for that glorious synchronized ratio. Because DDR5 8000 is a magic number if you are on Ryzen. So that's another thing, but that's kind of like a lesser point. The main thing is DDR5 48 gigabytes is the highest density today for single rank DIMMs, which implies fast memory. So the alternative is 96 gigabytes because 96 is the highest capacity for one DPC. I wonder if people know what that even means. For one DPC. Actually, this is not true anymore now that I think about it. Yeah, this is actually no longer true. 128 is now the highest. Because, yeah, that's actually... Okay, so this is actually wrong. However, the reason why I kind of ignored 128 gigabytes is... So technically, 2x64 is the new highest capacity for one DPC. Or one DIMM per channel. AKA 2 sticks of RAM. But the reason why 128 gigabytes is something that I don't really mention much on this channel is because when it launched, it was expensive relative to 96. So I didn't really see it as a cost-effective option for how much memory you're increasing. You're getting 32 gigs of RAM over 96 in addition to the 96. So yeah, that's a nice bump in memory capacity. But the price ratio, when I remember doing the math a year ago, well, it wasn't even a year ago, because 128, these memory sticks, these 64 gig DIMMs for consumer UDIMM, these didn't even hit the market until like late last summer. So realistically, there was only like a 1.5 month window, if that, to actually buy these before the crazy Armageddon of memory prices happened. So that's the reason why I don't talk about the 2x64 that often. And that's why I often think about 2x48 in my reasoning for what I recommend. And that's the reason why 96 has always come up as the optimal choice for highest capacity 1DPC. I remember, you know, like we were talking in the Discord channel, and one time a random viewer came in the channel and was asking for memory advice, and we were trying to like help him out, and he was, and we finally asked him like, how much memory are you running? And he's like 96 gigs. And I was thinking like, okay, that's music to my ears, because that means that somebody's paying attention to what I say when it comes to memory. Because I've always mentioned, if you want to go fast, you go 48. If you want high capacity, you go 96. That is the philosophy that I have basically been standing by since DDR5 came to market. Because prior to DDR5, we didn't have these newer memory capacities. You know, you used to do, like DDR4, you had 8 gigabyte, 16 gigabyte, 32 gigabyte, and then eventually 64 gigabyte, and then eventually 128 gigabytes of DDR4. But the DDR4 world was always, in my mind, was always 32 and 64. So when I think about my PC building, like, life cycle of when I was building these computers, like, DDR4 era, in my mind, is 32 gigabyte and 64 gigabyte, and maybe 128 gigabyte. But that's like Threadripper only, you know, like, I don't know of anyone who was running 128 gigs on a DDR4 system back at like 5 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So unless they were running like a Threadripper system or like an Intel HEDT, like a Skylake X, like no one running like a 9900K or a Ryzen 3800X or whatever. None of those guys were running 128 gigs of RAM back in the day, like for a gaming system. So realistically, I think of 32 and 64, but when I think of DDR5, I think of what I just said. So DDR5, I think of 48 and 96. And I basically plan to ride out the entire generation of DDR5's relevancy with 48 gigs or 96 gigs. And by the time when DDR6 comes out, we might be looking at different ratios or different capacities again. But personally, If I was on 32 in the DDR4 era, I'm on 48 in the DDR5 era. And if I was on 64 in the DDR4 era, I'm on 96 in the DDR5 era. Because when I think of my... Let's get rid of all this stuff. We don't need any of this stuff anymore. When I think of my my old computer, so when I think of like X570 with Ryzen 7 5800X, right? Like this computer had 64 gigabytes. It was DDR4 3200 64 gigabytes. This was 4x16. That's what I used to run. When would this have been? This would have been during the pandemic, in the year 2020. That is what I had. This was the GTR PC in the year 2020, or technically also the year 2021. We'll just say 2021. 5 years ago. 5 years ago, this was my computer. 5 years ago. That's what I was at. 5 years ago, I was living the 64 gigabyte dream. So this is the reason why, to me, it's like, yeah, I got to have more memory. So when did I make the jump? 20... If we go further back, my PC in 2017 was X370 Ryzen 7 1800X, and that was DDR4 3200 32 gigabyte. That was 4x8. So you know me, I'm always doing those 4 sticks of memory. I gotta be doing the 2 DPC. I gotta be going 2 DPC. Even when it was tough, because this was hard. This took BIOS updates to achieve. To actually run 32 gigs at 3200 DDR4, this was not easy to do in the early days of Zen 1. So these are my old computers, and then if I look at well, what is the computer that we're using right now? Here we are in 2026, X870E with Ryzen 9 9950X3D, DDR5 6400, 96 gigabyte, 4x24. So it's all about that 4 sticks of memory. So you can see like the progression. To me, I can clearly see the progression of technology. I can see how it's changed over time. And my older, I mean, this is a slightly older computer that I'm trying to remember what's the motherboard on that thing. Like there's a 2022, I think, or 2023 X670E Ryzen. What is this one running? Ryzen 7 9800X3D, DDR5 8000, 48 gigabyte, 2x24. Yeah, this one is a 2-stick system, which is rare. 2-stick system. Zen 6, I think, should still launch at the end of the year. I don't see why it shouldn't. It depends on how the situation in the Middle East plays out, because that could shift roadmaps. Mainly because a lot of the a lot of the engineering teams are based out of Israel, especially Intel. So that's something that we didn't really plan to talk about. But it does the situation in the Middle East does have implications on the roadmap for the CPUs. So Intel in particular relies very heavily on their engineering team based out of Israel. I don't think a lot of people that watch this channel know that. But Intel has a big R&D division based out of Israel. And they're the ones developing Nova Lake. Now, Nova Lake is already done. I can tell you Nova Lake is done. So, I don't know. I don't know how that could affect them. I mean, it could, though. It could also affect the GPUs, though. all of the more interesting. So basically, like, so 11th gen US, 12th gen is am I spelling this right? Israel, 13th gen US, Arrow, well, 14 and 13, but blah blah blah, same thing. Arrow Lake, Nova Lake, Israel. So yeah. So I don't know, guys. I mean, Intel could be in a bad situation because you look at their CPUs. Who does the CPU designs? The Israeli team did Sandy Bridge. So basically, like the legendary i7 2600K, that was Israel. The i7 6700K was Israel. The US Intel did the one that I had, 4770K, that was USA. Yeah. Intel did Skylake, Intel did Sandy Bridge and Ivy Bridge. And who did the what was the other one? Oh, Coffee Lake. Israel, I think. I think they also did all of these. I think they did 99, all that stuff was Israel. Yeah, so it's like all the like successful Intel CPUs. You notice the pattern, guys. Notice the pattern. Sandy Bridge. The legendary Sandy Bridge. Israel. Skylake. A CPU that people had forever. Israel. The first i9. Israel. The 12th gen. The first E-cores. The first E-cores. E-cores came from the Israeli team. That's where that concept came from. US did the biggest contribution that I remember the US team did for Intel CPUs was doing fiber on the fully integrated voltage regulator on the die. That was Haswell and then Broadwell. So USA did Haswell and Broadwell. They did Rocket Lake. Everyone's favorite Intel CPU was USA 11th gen, the node, what was it, like the porting the new core on the old node, whatever. Yeah, that was the USA. Raptor Lake, that's USA. The one that had the voltage melting issue, that was USA. So yeah, all the like really good ones though, 2600K, all the Skylake based stuff, the Golden Coves and the Gracemonts, and then the upcoming stuff. And I think they also did this one, and that includes Meteor Lake. So yeah. So if something happens over there, I don't know, man. Intel could be in some trouble. I don't think it's gonna like completely mess everything up, but you could see some delays in the roadmap from Intel. The only decent product line that Intel released recently has been Panther Lake, but it's so expensive that, yeah. And does Panther Lake come with? Can anyone tell me if Panther Lake ships with 64 gigs of memory? I'm not going to consider Panther Lake unless it has 64 gigs of RAM, of system RAM. If it doesn't have 64, I'm out. That disqualifies it for me. Everything I looked at was 32 gigs. Can somebody show me that they have like a lot of RAM? In this market, though, that means it's going to be super duper expensive. They go up to 96. Okay, well, that's not bad. That's good. I accept anything above 64, including 64, for soldered memory. If it's soldered RAM, it's got to be 64 minimum. I don't do less than 64 because if it's so dim, I'm okay with it because that means you can swap it out. That means you have an upgrade path. But if it's like hard soldered LPDDR5X, that's a deal breaker. I don't do anything less than 64 gigs if it's soldered memory. Because if it's soldered and if it's only 64, I'm literally stuck with that device forever with 64 gigs of memory. So that's the reason why it's got to have, like, 96 is good. 96 is good. 128 is best because, like, for example, Strix Halo. You guys know I have a Strix Halo PC, a mini PC. Mine has 190, oh no, not 190, 128 gigabytes of LPDDR5X running at 8,000. So, that's good. I accept that. Everyone trying to run DDR4 must have bought them. That is true. That is a good point about the 12th gen of CPUs from Intel. Although, I don't know, man. If I was going to buy an Intel system okay, if it was going to, if I was going to reuse my DDR4, I would probably buy 14th gen, not 12th gen. Just because it's newer, it's faster, it's better at this point. I mean, 12th gen is pandemic era. Well, okay, it's like late pandemic era stuff. 14th gen is like it's like 2.5 years old at this point. So it'll be 14th gen will be middle age later this year. So 14th gen is the only one I would consider at this point. If I was gonna build an Intel system with DDR4 and not have to buy memory. That is a valid strategy, though, because as far as I know, like, AMD doesn't even have... AMD has... like, what does AMD have? They have the... AMD stuff is even older. You know what I mean? Like... Okay, they do this based off of the popularity. The default on Micro Center is always by most popular CPU, or the best seller. So basically, the number one best seller at Micro Center nationwide is I find this hard to believe, the 9850X3D, not the 9800X3D. That means there's enough people that are willing to pay that premium over the regular 9800X3D for that KS Ryzen CPU, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's crazy. So then they have the 7800X3D, which is a good deal cheaper than the Zen 5s. And then you've got 9950X3D. Oh my goodness, the profit margins on that chip, $650 for the flagship CPU. And then another X3D, man, for $200, a 6-core 7600X3D. All right, and then the sixth most popular CPU is an Intel Core Ultra 7 265K Arrow Lake. This CPU, as well as all of these AMD CPUs, these CPUs require DDR5. So much for the DDR4, although, okay, well, the next CPU, speaking of DDR4, the next CPU is an AMD CPU, the Ryzen 7 Zen 3 based, aka pandemic era, aka 2020 CPU architecture, 5-year-old CPU architecture, the Vermeer AM4 5800 XT, complete with an awesome Wraith Prism cooler. Dude, if this was like $150, I might just buy this just because it comes with the Wraith Prism cooler, and the Wraith Prism cooler is like the coolest stock CPU cooler you could ever get. Like, for real. Then they have another DDR, but these are DDR4, but these are DDR4 only. These aren't even... Yeah, these aren't even... Okay, so like, well, that's DDR5. This is DDR5. This one's $70. And it comes with a Wraith Stealth cooler. This is $70 and it includes a CPU cooler in the box. Alright, then we've got Zen 4, the Ryzen 5 Zen 4, the Ryzen 7 9700X, the Zen 4 7700X, Okay, so you got a whole bunch of AMDs. So really, the most popular Intel CPU, I'm actually glad to see that the Core Ultra is more popular than the stupid 14th gen, because the 14th gen was terrible. It was terrible in terms of reliability because of the self-imploding voltage issue that plagued this entire generation. At least the ones that were like higher end, like 14700 and 14900, these suffered from the voltage issue, which is a serious problem. So that's the reason why I can understand why someone would buy 12th gen over 14th gen, just because of the reliability issues on 14th gen. But most of that stuff with the newest BIOSes should not be a problem anymore. And then we have the Core Ultra 9, wedged between these two, 14th gen. Then you have the... I don't understand why Intel even makes this, to be honest. So Intel offers a KF. The KF means it does not have integrated graphics. So if you buy this Intel CPU, you have no integrated graphics. So you literally just destroyed the one thing that Intel had, in my opinion, that made it more interesting, in the sense that the integrated graphics on Intel on the Core Ultra have AV1 encoding on integrated graphics, which is actually quite nice. Whereas AMD doesn't have that unless you get an AMD APU like the 8700G. That has AV1 encoding. But all these gamer CPUs, they don't have AV1 encoding on their integrated graphics. But they do have integrated graphics. So this Intel KF is like the stupidest thing in existence, because only someone who knows nothing about technology would buy this. Because it's like, why would you buy this to save? Like, how much money are you saving? Like, this one is $260. You're going to save $10 by losing AV1 encoding and the integrated graphics. Like, that is the dumbest trade. Like, you're going to save $10 for, like, no integrated... Yeah, that's sounds so smart. Okay, so then you have there's a 16-core Vermeer for $300. Wow, this is a 16-core Zen 3 pandemic levels of performance here. We're talking 2020 performance, DDR4 exclusive. Then we have the 9950X. So this is like the non-X3D flagship for Zen 5. And then you have the not as ancient but still pandemic levels of performance, the 12th gen. So for reference, Zen 3 is a 2020 CPU. 12th gen is a 2021 CPU. So both of these are like old. They're like old in my mind. So then you like I wouldn't buy like 330 for Alder Lake. I would not buy that. I ain't paying that. That's a waste. All right, Granite Ridge, 180 for a Zen 5 6-core. This is like a budget gamer. This is like a high school kid's PC right here. Like, that's what that looks like. All right, then a Ryzen 9 9900 X3D. This is the 12 core. This is like the rare 12 core that everyone ignores, but it's still pretty good. $500. These are the ones that end up in a lot of like pre-builds because the DIY market doesn't really buy these that often. All right, and then you've got Threadripper, Raptor Lake Refresh with no overclocking capabilities. And then you have the old Threadripper for Zen 4. And then there's some other stuff on the next page. So yeah, overall, these prices are normal prices. I only see one Intel Alder Lake. There's only this guy over here. I mean, the rest of them are probably on the other page. Yeah, we've got, okay, Alder Lake with no integrated graphics. Like, what? No integrated graphics. All right, and then Raptor Lake, Refresh, i3. Man, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. i3. Raphael, Zen 4, Ryzen Threadripper. So this is the Threadripper that I've got. For reference, for those wondering, the CPU that I've been doing a lot of the weekend live streams on features this CPU right here. The 24 core 48 thread Shimada Peak 9960X Threadripper. So Zen 5, full AVX 512 code path. Incredibly fast at compiling shaders. This thing literally just crushes through. It just shreds compiling shaders for games. It's ridiculously fast at compiling shaders because it's so many threads. All right, and then we got Raphael, some more Zen 4 stuff from back in the day. These are like 2022 CPUs, so they're kind of old. They're like, what, over 3 years old. These are like middle-aged CPUs that are DDR5 exclusive. Personally, for those that are looking, like, if you're trying to get advice from me, just going through this list, personally, I recommend for gaming PC, obviously, X3D. It could be Zen 4. If you're on a strict budget, Zen 4 X3D, like a 7800 X3D, is totally fine, even in 2026. But if you can afford the extra spend, I would get Zen 5. Zen 5 is the quality of life difference between Zen 5 and Zen 4 is night and day. First of all, Zen 5 has much more consistent memory training behavior than Zen 4. There's something different with the microcode for Zen 5 that is just straight up better with memory training. Zen 4 ran hotter. Zen 4 periodically had to redo memory training. And it also doesn't have the full fat 512 AVX 512 data path. It can do AVX 512, but it does it in 2 clock cycles for one operation because it has to break up a 512 command into 256-bit width commands, if that makes sense. So Zen 5 is definitely the way to go. Like, Zen 5 is the king of gaming right now. Zen 5 gives you the best experience in terms of quality of life. If you have to go Intel because you're an Intel fanboy, because realistically, like, objectively speaking here, the only people that would be buying Intel are Intel fanboys. I mean, seriously, like, real talk. Because as someone who literally has access to all of them, I literally have the Intel Core Ultra 9 285K in the system to the right of me over here. And we're literally streaming on a Zen 5 based Ryzen 9 flagship, aka 9950X3D. I know the experience of both of them. And in terms of gaming, dude, Intel gets wrecked right now in terms of gaming compared to AMD. These AMD X3D CPUs are like on a whole nother level. So, and that is something that the upcoming Arrow Lake refresh is not going to be able to keep up with. But if you have to get Intel, like, realistically, if you have to get Intel, the only Intel CPU that I recommend right now is the Core Ultra 7 265K. This would be the one to get. I think that the Core Ultra 9 at $540 is way too much money because you're not gaining anything in terms of, like, performance cores. Both the Core Ultra 7 and the Core Ultra 5, or the Core Ultra 7 and the Core Ultra 9, both have 8 P cores. The only difference between them is the number of E cores. And the E cores only help if you're doing some kind of productivity workload. They do not help with gaming at all. So trust me, I've tested them. So I know the difference. We've done, like, Monster Hunter Wilds proves the difference there. But so does Dragon's Dogma. But the one thing I'll say on the Core Ultra 7, the Core Ultra 7 gives you the exact same performance as the Core Ultra 9 in terms of gaming performance, while using slightly less power, and it's more well behaved. It runs more efficiently. It doesn't heat up as much. Although, surprisingly or not surprisingly, Arrow Lake is a lot cooler running than the Intel 14th gen. Intel 14th gen was constantly hitting 100 degrees Celsius on my Noctua D15 air cooler. So, and I consider that unacceptable. If I can't maintain the temperature on a Noctua D15, then in my opinion the CPU is a fail. It's a failure of engineering. You can give Alder Lake in relation. You can give Alder in relation. You need to check dinner? In relation to Raptor? Oh, I'm pretty sure Alder Lake has sold more than Raptor Lake. Especially if we consider the OEM market. If we consider the OEM market, Alder Lake has sold a lot more. Alder Lake's been on the market like a whole year longer. Unless you're considering Raptor Lake like 13 plus 14 combined. If you're going to combine the two of them together, then I don't know about that. Maybe Raptor Lake has sold more than Alder Lake. Because you're basically saying 12th gen versus 13 and 14 combined. Yeah. And I guess the one thing I will say about the Intel Core Ultra, because the one thing that's interesting about Intel Core Ultra is the multi-thread is surprisingly good for something that does not have any hyperthreading, because there's no hyperthreading on Arrow Lake, yet it still outperforms Raptor Lake in multi-thread, even though it has less threads to the operating system, which is quite interesting. There are some other things that I like about it. I like that it has the ability to add Thunderbolt 5 if you have a motherboard that can allow you to add Thunderbolt 5. I've done a video about this subject already. And the other thing is it supports QDIMM. It supports CUDIMMs today. Not next. You don't have to wait. But although, how much are QDIMM memory right now? Like, I don't even want to know what they cost right now. So there's that. So it's kind of an interesting product when you look at it holistically. Like, Arrow Lake is definitely not for gaming. And that kind of means that it's meant for high-end desktop, like productivity. But at the same time, it doesn't offer the memory channels, the memory bandwidth, or the PCIe lanes that a true high-end desktop user would require. So it's kind of in a strange spot. Because if someone was really going to build a workstation, they wouldn't get one of these. They would either get a Sapphire Rapids Intel system, or they would get a Threadripper system. So it's a really strange position to be in for Core Ultra right now. Like, it's strange. We'll see what happens, because there is going to be the Intel Core Ultra. I saw the article come in. Where is it? There was an article about Intel, or maybe it was on WCCF Tech. Somewhere in here I saw something mentioning the Arrow Lake refresh. Arrow Lake. I thought I saw it. Why am I not able to see it now? Oh, right here. Intel to unveil the Core Ultra 5 250K Plus and the Core Ultra 7 270K Plus on March 11th, so next week, literally a little less than a week from now. The reviews are going to go live on March 23rd. We've known for quite a while that Intel's early 2026 refresh of the Core Ultra Series 2 could see a refresh with Core Ultra 5 and Core Ultra 7. It's interesting they're not doing a Core Ultra 9 with review. I guess they don't feel they need to. And that's also kind of telling of how confident they are in the product. This would probably be when the company announces the two chips and reveals some of their specs. Reviews could remain on track for 2023. Okay, so they're showing here on the website. You can see how they compare to the... I actually see some differences. Okay, so there are some actual differences. So the new Core Ultra 5 features 4 more E-cores, a 100 megahertz P-core boost frequency for the top performing core, and the cache scaled based off of the increase in the cores. And the same TDP. The max on this is probably 170, I would guess, 175. And then Core Ultra 7 265K to 270K plus, 4 more E-cores. So the biggest change looks like, okay, this one doesn't even have any increase in frequency. The Core Ultra 5 Plus gets a 100 megahertz increase. The Core Ultra 7 Plus gets no increase in frequency, but it does still get the 4 additional E-cores. So basically both the Core Ultra 5 and 7 are getting 4 more E-cores. That'll be the difference. No real changes to anything else. Cache is scaling accordingly because of the additional cores. So that's it. So like I said, it's kind of a nothing burger. So remember what I said earlier this year, back in January? I said that the Intel is going to have a double launch this year. It's going to be like 2021 all over again. They're going to launch the equivalent to the 11th gen, which is this stuff. And then later in the year, they're going to launch the equivalent of the 12th gen, which will be the Nova Lake stuff. So there will be a lot more interesting things from Intel. It's just not right now. So this is not the time to upgrade to Intel, because this is going to be very disappointing. Like, very disappointing. The new refresh costs less than RAM. Well, yeah, it better, considering what RAM is. All right, so new CPUs coming this month. I already anticipated this. You can go back and watch some of the older episodes of Tech Thursdays where we talked about this. So that's kind of a nothing burger. Apparently there's an RTX. Why do these NVIDIA headlines read like they're April Fool's jokes? Like the whole thing about the RTX 3060 coming back. And then this thing, 9 gigabytes? Is that supposed to be like, is that like supposed to be an insult to the gamers? 9 gigs? They're gonna do like one more just to taunt people? It's like, oh, you complained about 8 gigabytes not being enough. Okay, here's one more. The difference between 8 gigabytes and 9 gigabytes does not mean you can play at 1440p. That's not what that means. Like, that's still kind of a joke. And it's the 50-50 of all things. Like, why does this need to exist? This is such a waste of VRAM. They're gonna waste another gigabyte of VRAM on a lousy, weak GPU like this? See, these articles sound like clickbait. Like, this sounds so fake. Like, why would they even make something like this? This is such a waste. Yeah, even if they're allocating the more dense modules, like, they're still wasting those better modules on this type of GPU. Like, do you think people buying RTX 5050 care about the whole 8 gigabyte GPU, like 8 gigabyte VRAM not being enough? Probably not. So, I don't know, man. That's a waste. This is what you call a waste of silicon. That's a waste of silicon. That memory could have gone to other things. I'm not even going to bother doing a poll because I know the people are going to vote no on the 5050 9 gigabyte variant. Like, are you going to buy one of these? No. Am I going to buy one of these? No. Gaming GPU. Wait, what? NVIDIA confirms supply constraints may limit gaming GPU availability. Oh, this isn't really a new article. This was like a week or two ago. Was this last week? Yeah, this was last week. Yeah, it looks like the chief financial officer at NVIDIA confirmed that the gaming sector may struggle during the company's latest Q4 earnings call in a short but very important note, which means they literally only spent like less than 10 seconds referring to the gaming division. They probably talked for like 45 minutes about AI and AI and data center and AI and data center and AI factories and more AI. And maybe mentioned MCP in there at some point. But all this AI and AI in space and all that stuff. And then when it came to the gaming set, they probably mentioned it for like 6 seconds. They just like a little blip in there. If you were falling asleep, you missed it. Because it happened so fast where they mentioned the gaming. If you were falling asleep because you were listening in and they talked about AI for like 45 minutes straight, and then all of a sudden, she says, looking ahead, while end demand for our products remains strong and channel inventory levels are healthy, we expect supply constraints to be the headwind to gaming in Q1 and beyond. That was it. One sentence, rather vague, but conveys the message that supply constraints will definitely impact RTX 50 series in the current core and possibly beyond. Yeah, this is I don't know. The more we talk about this, the more I feel bad about this being like my primary hobby. You know what I'm saying? Like what? Sounds so bad. This week in gaming. Actually, wait, no, this is last week in gaming. Did they not have one for this week? Resident Evil Requiem, Royal Vermin, Rise of Piracy, Nested Lands, Spellcasters Chronicles. Here's a game that I didn't have time to cover. Yes. Tales of Berseria was remastered. Another game that I didn't cover last year that also got remastered was Tales of Exilia. Tales of Exilia was stuck on PS3 until last year. And Tales of Berseria, this game was stuck on PS4. And now it's remastered. So again, this game unfortunately falls into the same situation that Monster Hunter Stories fell into, in the sense that it's like it's wedged between these other games that are new games like Resident Evil, and I'm more interested in them because they're new games. Now, Monster Hunter Stories 3 is a new game, but there are other new games that I'm more interested in, at least initially. So yeah, I've completely forgot about Tales of Berseria. That's a really good game. So, that I never finished it. I never finished Tales of Berseria, so that would have been one worth actually playing through again. But anyway, I think that pretty much does it for this episode of Tech Thursdays. We will be streaming the remaining story playthrough that I started last weekend for Resident Evil Requiem, so we will be streaming this again. If I decide to cover the secret game via the free demo, I need to decide if I'm going to do that before Resident Evil or after Resident Evil. So I think I'll probably do it at the beginning. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think, for those of you who watch my gaming live streams on the weekend, do you prefer if I cover the upcoming game first? Or do you want me to finish Resident Evil first? And then, if I have time, cover the upcoming secret game? So, let's do a poll. I'll leave it up to the chat to decide. Which should I play first this Friday? The choices are secret game, which is a demo, which is available now, or Resident Evil Requiem. Okay, the poll is up. So basically the question is, what do I play first? Meaning, here's the thing though, keep this in mind. If Requiem requires me to play for several hours to finish the game, then I may not even cover the secret game if there's no time. Now, if I play the secret game first, It's just a demo. So that means that once the demo's over, that's it. That's the end. It's time to switch to Resident Evil. So it really comes down to, I guess, how interested are the viewers in the other game versus Resident Evil. It looks like Resident Evil's winning, though. Okay. Wow, it looks like 10 votes out of 47. 51. We have 51 concurrents and only 1/5 of the people voted. It makes me wonder if I should have put a third choice in there. That makes me wonder if I should have put in, what's that other game? Arc Knights Enfield. Arc Knights Enfield as the third option. Because what's her name? There's like a character in the game. She's on the banner right now, and her story event has, I think, like 7 days remaining or something, and I haven't done it yet, so I need to do it because it's FOMO. So I'm basically forced to play Arc Knights Enfield. But I don't think I'm gonna stream that unless you guys want me to stream Arc Knights Enfield, the playthrough for Yvonne. So otherwise, I guess I should have put that as the third choice. Now I feel like I should have redone this entire poll, but whatever. We'll just stand by this. You just want to know what the secret game is? Well, then you got to vote for the secret game, because the thing is, if it only takes me like 2 to 3 hours to finish Resident Evil Requiem, then I think I might have enough time to do the secret game. But if I don't, if it takes like, let's say it takes like 4 hours. If it goes over 3.5 hours in Resident Evil, I'm not going to cover the secret game. I don't feel like doing another like 5 hour plus gaming live stream just for to go beyond Resident Evil. Resident Evil is a exhausting game to play. As someone who doesn't play, especially the Leon S. Kennedy sections, because his sections, there are more enemies, they're more aggressive. Well, they're slightly more aggressive. They're not more aggressive, but there's just more of them. And the environments that you encounter them in are more challenging to deal with and maneuver around. So I feel like the Leon S. Kennedy sections are more tiring to play through compared to the Gray sections. The Gray sections usually are designed for you to just run past everything. I mean, you can still do the same thing with Leon, but you're not going to get any of the benefits by skipping past everything if you're playing as Leon. You never got into the series? Dude, I went back and I watched like a video essay on Resident Evil Village. Resident Evil Village seems really, really good. I don't know, man. Resident Evil Village, the previous RE8, the game from 2021, that Resident Evil seems really good. Watching that video essay on it, I completely forgot. I was like, yeah, man, this game is actually pretty good. Like, Resident Evil Requiem has, they went for the dichotomy. There's two different, like, there's the dread factor playing as Grace, the fear factor playing as Grace, versus the action style playing as Leon. So they have that cool dynamic. But man, Resident Evil 8, Village. Can we talk about how good Village is for those that played Resident Evil Village? Resident Evil Village, the structure of it, it's way more mysterious. Like Resident Evil 9 feels a lot like Resident Evil 2 to some degree. Village, though, man, like you go in, it starts off, Ethan's in his home with his wife and his daughter. It starts off all nice. Then Chris Redfield shows up. Stuff happens. He gets separated from them. Supposedly, the daughter gets killed or somehow. You know, like the explanation's all, it happens. It's all in your face. It's all like weird. It's like you're in shock. And then you go in to this weird village in the snow, and you find these lichen beasts. You find these group of human survivors. They're doing a ritual. Something happens. There's an old lady. You find a really obese man who sells you weapons. And it just sounds so weird describing it that way, but you know what I'm saying? Like, for those of you that played Village is legit good, man. It's in first person, so it has more of a fear factor. Things are in your face. You get to the castle. You run from this giant, tall vampire. Actually, no. Before you go there, you meet the whole crew, the whole motley crew, like all 5 of them. The lady, or what is it, Lady Miranda. You see these pictures of her, like these worship religious things people have of her. It's all like really interesting how they did the art behind it. Then you meet her and the 4 Dark Masters from Digimon, except they're not the Dark Masters from Digimon. It's, you know, you got like the dude with glasses who looks like he's right out of like Bloodborne, and he speaks normally. Then you have the hunched over guy who looks like he's got tumors all over his back, and then you've got a creepy doll with a woman that's all dressed in black, can't even see the face, looks really strange. Then you see who's the other one? Oh, the big vampire woman. Then you go to the vampire woman's castle. You do all this stuff searching around. You deal with the daughters. They're made of flies. You finally get out of there. You get the key item. You go back to the thing where you put the 1 out of 4 things. It's like, oh, you beat Metal Seadramon. Now you gotta go fight Puppetmon. Okay, the fat guy tells you where to go, or he gives you like a general idea of the 3 remaining Dark Masters, and then you go. I forget what they were called. Like, they had a name. Like, they're not Dark Masters. I'm using the Digimon terminology. I forgot what they're called. The Alliance of Evil or something. Whatever. You go in. You go this weird path. It's really creepy. You start hallucinating, and you get to this like house on the edge of like a cliffside. There's a waterfall behind it. You go inside that house. Oh, you have to give away your picture of your wife and daughter, and you get inside, and the whole vibe of the game changes. You go from playing vampire hunting or running, depending on how you look at it, to literally playing PT. That game is good. I'm not going to spoil any more of it, but the game is good, man. Resident Evil Village. For those of you that played Requiem but never played Village, I highly recommend Village. Village is good. Requiem is really good too. Don't get me wrong, but I went back and I started watching like some video essays on Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil Village. Village, man, that game has a lot of stuff in it. Yeah, Village is good. Village is good. That's all I gotta say. Because I like that Village. You know what's weird now that I think about this? Thinking about Requiem and Village. The developers set out to create the sense of dread playing as Grace in Requiem. But I feel like playing as Ethan throughout all of Village seems to capture that so naturally in certain parts of that game without having to have 2 different characters. Now, later on, there is another playable character in Village. I'm not going to spoil it, but yeah, I was surprised because I was like, I don't understand the goal. Like, Capcom wanted to show the dichotomy of having like the fear factor playing as Grace, but then the action, almost like RE4, RE6 level action playing as Leon. I guess that's what they wanted. They wanted the dichotomy there, but man, Village kind of had all of it. It made me realize, man, Village actually is really good. Wow. I almost kind of want to go back and play that game again. But yeah, Village. Okay, so let's do another poll. This will be the last one before we end the stream. So it looks like we'll be playing Requiem first, based off of the votes. So stay tuned for the finality of Requiem. But I want to do another one. Which Resident Evil game is your favorite? Now, I know I can only do 4 choices, so we're going to do 9, 8, 7, 4? Yeah, because these are the most recent ones. 4 remake. There. I just basically am going in order. Because I know some people probably think Resident Evil 2 is their favorite, but 2 was like 2019. So I'm trying to make it more like recent. So there's 4 remakes, 7, 8, 9. Man, 7 and remake were like way up there at the very beginning of the start when the poll went live. Which made me realize, man, a lot of people like 7. 7, okay. I kind of don't think I care about the favorite. I kind of want to ask you guys a different question. So we'll do another question. And then we'll end the stream. Oh yeah, Village is on Switch too. It is so dead split. Really? It's split 25% to all 4? Man, people are liking 4 remake. Remember, this is 4 remake, not 4 the original. It's specifically 4 remake. The game from 2023. Because Resident Evil 4 remake was 2023. I'm trying to do the more recent ones. Technically, 7 is older than 2 and 3 remake, but it's more recent in terms of the story, I guess. Or well, no, I shouldn't say that. In terms of like, it was the first one to leverage RE Engine. Seven, 8, 9. You're very confident in the trend? In the trend, what? 2. You're talking about the increase in price? I'm not sure what you're talking about. I'm a little confused. Like, the trend of what? Like, what? Resident Evil 7 is only 13%. So it looks like people prefer the newer ones beyond 7. Because 4 remake is technically newer than 7. Man, a lot of people like a 9. I don't know if that's really, really good for 9 or if that's recency bias. Because I will admit, I thought 9 was like the best one ever until I started watching the video essays of the older games, and I was like, yeah, actually, some of those older games had some really good. 4 had really good stuff for one thing, but 8 though, man, Village, whoa, like what the. I don't know. To me, when I think of Village, the scary part of Village seems scarier than the scary parts in Requiem. You know what I'm saying? Those who played Village know exactly what part of the game I'm talking about. There's a certain house. I'll just leave it at that. There's a house that you go to after you deal with Tall Woman. And I can't remember if you can. I think you have to go to it next. I don't think you can skip it and go to the hunched over guy on the Hamlet. I think you have to go to the house. Am I wrong or am I correct in that statement? Anyone remember the name? What was the name? Beneviento? Does that name ring a bell? I don't know. I kind of think Beneviento's scarier than like all of Requiem. The one thing that I still keep thinking of when I think of Requiem is the part where Grace she climbs down a ladder, and that conveyor belt that's grinding up all the meat starts moving. That part was kind of alarming in Requiem. But there's a certain area in Village that I think is scarier than like all of the scary parts that you play as Grace in Requiem, including the underground area. Is that like a Resident Evil thing? Like, do they always have to have... You're in a large building, and then you eventually get out of it, and you go underground? Is that, like, always a thing? They always have to go to an underground area? Like a sewer or something? Like, that. It seems like that's a thing. That's like a general theme that they use. All right, it looks like Requiem's winning. So I'm going to end that poll. Requiem wins. Whether or not that's recency bias, we're going to give that win to Requiem. Remake barely beat Village. Probably by like one vote. It was 25% versus 24%. That was literally one vote. So the last question, or the last poll, which RE game is the scariest, in your opinion? And the choices are going to be Requiem, Village. I don't feel like 4 is that scary. 5 doesn't feel scary. 6 definitely wasn't scary. So it's going to be 2, 2, and 3. So now we're going to include... Well, actually, no, 7. Let's put 7. So 7... RE7... And what will be the last one? I guess 2... 2 remake. Alright, this is the final poll. And I promise this is the final poll. This is the actual question that I wanted to ask. The favorite one is kind of like whatever. I want to see like what people think is the scariest one. Which Resident Evil game is the scariest? Requiem, Village, 7. So 7, for those that forget, 7 is the one with the Baker's family. That one was the one that could be played in PSVR. The whole game could be played in PSVR. And boy, is that an experience. Playing a Resident Evil game in VR, back when VR was like brand new and that was the thing. That was unique. All right, and then I think Resident Evil Village also had a VR mode. But you could literally play the entire Resident Evil 7 on PlayStation VR. I played probably 20 minutes of it and then just gave up, man. I couldn't do it. I could not do it. And it was not because of motion sickness. It was just I couldn't do it. It was just like too much. Turn back the light. Turn on the lights. This is too much. Like, Nah. We aren't doing this in VR anymore. But yeah, Resident Evil 7 in VR, man. In VR. As someone who has the original PlayStation VR for the PS4 Pro, I legit played Resident Evil 7 in VR. And I lasted about 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. And then it was like, I can't do this. I gotta go back to regular controller. This is just it's too nerve-wracking. Because, guys, this is like my first playthrough. First playthrough. No spoilers. I have no idea what's around the corner. And you're playing it in VR. Yeah. Horror games in VR is good. I actually think that's a good use case for VR, to be honest. Like, I've said this before, like, VR, the genres for VR that I think work are rhythm games, like Beat Saber, for, like, exercising. That's probably, like, number one. And then flight simulators, driving simulators. So basically, like simulating doing something like flying or driving. That would be like number 2. And then number 3 would be games like Resident Evil. So like music games, simulation, like flight simulators, and then like horror games. Those are like the best things for VR. But dude, 7, oh my god, 7 in VR. Oh man, I can't do it anymore. I couldn't do it. I tried, I couldn't do it. When I lived in Tokyo, uh was it Bandai Namco? One of the game, it was not Capcom. I think it was Bandai Namco. One of them had a VR center in Shinjuku. And I remember going to it with my friends at the time. We went in there and there was this VR game that was like a horror game. It was like playing Resident Evil 7 or Village in VR in a VR arcade. And the like legit the VR arcade in Japan at the time was using HTC Vive. HTC Vive. So we wear HTC Vive and we were going around and you're basically playing as like a crippled person. Like you can't walk because it's like a sit down type experience. So you're basically, your character is in a wheelchair. It's quite fascinating how they did it. You're in a wheelchair in VR and you have to move around slowly because you're in a wheelchair, and that way it's not like a game where you can like walk around and move around. So that way they're able to advance the level by you sitting down. But yeah, man, dude, like that was my first experience for the horror genre of VR, and yeah, that was interesting. I'll just say that. But I feel like Resident Evil 7 on PSVR was even scarier than that. Because like this is all, we're talking a whole game. Like that was in an arcade setting. But this is like an actual like full on Resident Evil game in VR. But the difference between VR and playing it like on a screen is VR you can turn around. Because you can move your head, right? So you can look behind you, you can look to your left, you can look around the corner, you can look under a table, you can open a drawer and look in the drawer for the item. Like it's very, very different. And then you hear all the ambient creepy sounds, the creaking wood on the floor if you're on the second. Yeah, man, it's if you're on the patio, like wow, yeah. Okay, so a lot of people are voting for 7. I hope that's not because I was talking about Resident Evil 7 in VR. Because that was not the intention. I was not intending to change, to like influence people's voting based off of me just talking about Resident Evil 7 in VR. But a lot of people are saying 7 is the scariest. Really? I mean, I think 7 is pretty scary, but I guess maybe because more of 7 has a vibe that's kind of like parts of Village. Village has more like running action. You go outside a lot. And it changes the environment up a lot more than 7 did. So maybe that's why. I think 2 Remake was pretty creepy too, man. Like the police station. Mr. X. Although, like, once you figure out how Mr. X behaves and you can just cheese the AI, then it just kind of doesn't really seem scary. Resident Evil 2 had a lot of... It really created the creepy... The atmospheric creepy factor with how they made the hallways dark. You know, when you go inside the police station, you start going to the left, the east block or the west block, and how they're different from each other. Yeah, Resident Evil 2... That one does stick out in terms of the fear factor. 3 played a lot like 2, didn't it? The only difference was 3, you play as Jill Valentine a lot, and you go outside a lot. I remember going out on the street areas as Jill, running around. And like occasionally Nemesis would show up and just be more of an annoyance than something to be afraid of. You know what I'm saying? So 3, I don't know, like 3 got more actiony. And Jill also had like a really good forward dodge that Leon and Claire didn't have in 2. So yeah, that's why I didn't include 3. So, all right, well, all right, guys. Well, I guess that's pretty much the end. So, wow, 53% voted for RE7. That's a lot. 54%. Wow. Okay, so 7. I don't know how many people voted for that because of the whole VR, but or not. But wow. Okay. I guess you guys think the enemies in 7 are scarier than the ones in the other games? I mean, the enemies in that game are basically the Baker's family. It's the Baker's family, and there's another type of enemy that I'm not going to spoil for those that didn't play it. We won't talk about the other type of enemy in 7. But anyway, all right, well, that's kind of the end of the stream. So that's going to be it for this week's episode of Tech Thursdays. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, I'll be back next week with the next episode of Tech Thursdays. The house and the gross kitchen scary enough. What's scary about it is there are real people just like this. Wait, what? There are real people? You mean the Baker's family? The Baker's family? The Baker's family doesn't seem like normal people to me. Anyway. Alright, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Tech Thursdays. For those of you that are new to the channel, we do these weekly shows every Thursdays, as the name implies, where we talk about all things technology, and sometimes we talk about gaming. Although, if you are interested in the gaming discussion like we did at the end of this stream, tune in to the weekend live streams where I feature specific games. In this case, we're talking about Resident Evil, since Resident Evil Requiem is the latest and greatest from Capcom in terms of their action horror genre. And I will be completing my playthrough. Hopefully I'll be completing it. I'm pretty sure I'm going to complete it this weekend. So tune in to see the conclusion of Resident Evil Requiem if you're interested. And otherwise, I will see you on the next episode of Tech Thursdays next week. Until then, take care, and I will see you then. Thanks.